Skate is by far one of the most popular skating simulators of its time, and even to this day. Is it the best skating game? I'd say yes. But the Tony Hawk series and recent rise of both Session and Skater XL make that a question worthy of a full video in itself. It's a difficult comparison too, because while Tony Hawk had an arcade approach to romanticized skateboarding, EA's Skate series initially nailed an identity and grounded realism. After releasing Skate to generally favorable reviews, many sequels and spin-offs were created and released within just a few years. EA and BlackBox had struck gold, and it was clear that there was, and still is, an audience for this kind of game, as the current development of Skate 4 would have you believe. The Skate series, despite having such short development times for their many entries, went through a metamorphosis that many games couldn't dream of. So let's talk about it. I want to throw a caveat out here that all the footage captured was originally on an emulator, but after having issues with frame rates and other technical blunders, I ended up opting for using the backwards compatibility of the Xbox Series S to play Skate 1 and 3. 2 isn't available for digital purchase on there, which meant I had to play the PS3 version of the game, and it ran pretty rough at times. But let's get back to Skate, and its defining feature, its flick-it control scheme, which sees the player flicking their control stick in specific directions to perform tricks. These controls are intuitive and make sense when compared to real life. An ollie sees you pulling the stick down and up, but a kickflip or heel flip sees you pulling it down and up slightly to the side. Meanwhile, a shove-it will require you to curve the stick from 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and by the way, the clock lingo is just an easy way of explaining where your thumb needs to go. Everything in the game starts with either a kickflip, an ollie, or a shove-it. Every trick is built upon or around those 3 starters, so if you can master those, then anything is possible. Some have criticized the controls for being inconsistent or unreliable, but I disagree. I really hate the get good argument that comes up when people criticize a game or control scheme, but truthfully, I have found that with enough practice, I've come to reliably perform every trick I've wanted to, and when I messed up a trick, it was always because I wasn't being precise enough. When looking at my tricks here, you can see that the game is very forgiving with the precision. When I played the game as a child, I just pushed the stick in random directions, pumping out fast ollies, shove-its, and kickflips with maybe an accidental hard flip for good measure, but there was no premeditation or planning, and unfortunately, this carried me through a lot of challenges. I think that this will lead many to a roadblock, as it did for me. My roadblock was a pro challenge for Rob Dyrdek, where you have to perform a 360 flip to frontside crooks. I had no idea what either of those were, and I spent literal hours trying to figure out how to pull the 360 flip off, and I found myself not being precise enough, accidentally performing either a varial heel flip or a 360 pop shove-it. A 360 shove-it is essentially taking the stick from 8 o'clock, riding the edge to 2 o'clock, and a varial will take it from 8 to 7 and then out towards 3 o'clock. A 360 flip is from 8 to 6 and outwards towards 3. So you see the issue here. If I was too wide, I did a 360 shove-it, and if I was too tight, I did a varial heel flip. But after hours of looking at the trick book, practicing, and failing a lot, I finally nailed the trick, and then I did it again. I wasn't perfectly consistent, but I was able to do it every 3 or so attempts. The tray flip became, and still is, one of my favorite tricks, purely because it took me so long to perform it, and it was the only cool looking trick that I worked hard to perform intentionally. I was no longer getting lucky with performing something cool. I did something cool because it was exactly what I wanted. It was this roadblock that opened my eyes to just how deep this system is. Now I wanted to conquer hard flips, inward heels, nollie lasers, the whole book, man. I wanted that shit. I'll admit, it's fun to simply flick the stick without intention and do some grinds and pops, but it was so much more satisfying to see a line, plan it out, and then execute it. It's one thing to look cool, but doing so intentionally is a whole different level of satisfaction. Grinds and grabs have similar means of execution, with different directions on the thumbsticks having different grab tweaks and grind slides, you know the works. I had a similar roadblock with grinds in Skate 3, with a challenge asking me to complete a blunt slide. And it was the same story. And that is now my favorite grind, by the way. All of this is to say that the reward of the Skate series is almost entirely dependent on how you wish to engage with its mechanics, and how determined you are, because once you figure out the controls, I don't think you'd want to have it any other way. But as with any series, it evolved. So let's take a proper look back at the Skate series, going through the 3 major entries and discussing what worked, what didn't, what's new, and what's old. I know that there was a notable spin-off by the name of Skate It for the Nintendo Wii and DS, but I won't be covering those here, as they have completely different control schemes and are spin-offs. Before I dive too far into these games though, I need to make it clear that I'm coming at this from the perspective of a spectator and a gamer. I'm familiar with skating, and I've been a fan of it since I was a kid, but I always participated as a spectator. Sure, I knew how to ride one, and even though it's been some time time since I last stepped foot on one. If you put a board in front of me, I could probably pop an ollie within 20 minutes of refinding my bearings. But the point is, there's some nuance here that as a spectator I miss out on. And when looking at this game primarily as a game and less as a true-to-life simulator, there will be things that I don't notice or things that don't bother me, that might end up bothering some hardcore skaters. So to help with this, I have Rat Video, who's going to give us a perspective of the skate games from someone who's an actual skater.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I run a channel called Rat Video where I talk about skateboarding, oftentimes skateboarding games, through the lens of someone who has skated for over 20 years. And I remember the first time I saw skate. It was in a show called Robin Big, where a pro skater and his friend are doing stuff. And the first time I saw it in motion was right there on that show, and I was blown away by it. And it wasn't just that the skaters looked good and the tricks looked good. It was the camera. So when you film skateboarding, you often follow the skater with your camera and you hold it down low because you're trying to see the board, you're trying to see the trick. And normally in games, the camera's floating way up here somewhere and you see, the back of the character's head. And that's not how you film skateboarding. So like, it wasn't just that the actual skateboarding itself looked good. It was that the way that the whole experience was. It looked like this was footage from, that you shot last weekend. The Skate series was really the first successful sim skateboarding game. I wouldn't say it was the first one ever, though, because we had Thrasher Skate and Destroy, which came out before that on the PlayStation. And this game is, I love it, but it's not fun. It's very complicated, very awkward. If you want to do certain tricks, like you have to hold the flip button, and then you have to hold the spin button, and then you hold this button up here to do it off the nose, and you hold this button to spin the opposite way, and you let go of them all at the same time and your character will perform the trick. Now to me, it was really cool because you were doing realistic lines, you were doing normal skateboard tricks, but it wasn't as fun for people who didn't skate. You didn't really have that experience. You didn't know that these were tricks that people could actually do. And then the Pro Skater games, although they're a lot of fun, they're more skateboarding themed platform action type of games. You're trying to grind this not because it's a cool thing to grind, but because there's a secret tape on top, or there's the S or the K, and you're just trying to collect things using skateboarding as a tool. It doesn't feel like skateboarding. So when Skate came out, it was a huge difference. It was a game that was designed to actually feel like skateboarding. The controls are a huge part of that because you don't just tell your skater what trick you're trying to do. Like in Pro Skater, you're spinning, so if you're in the air, you came out of a ramp or whatever, and you're just going to hit square. You don't have a connection with what that trick is. In Skate, if you want to do a 360 flip, you have to perform that trick. It's on purpose. You are intentionally doing a trick that you're supposed to be doing. And something else was that if you do a kickflip stationary, it's worth almost nothing. If you do it very fast and you cover this much distance and you drop this far, then it's worth extra based on all of that. So you can make gaps. There's stuff that's obviously designed to skate, a big stair set or something like that. But if you find something that you were not intended to, that's worth just as much. It's worth what the gap is worth. And that feels like skateboarding because you can explore and you can find new things and you can do a trick that makes sense to do at that spot. And if you did it with the speed and you cleared that gap, you'll get enough points for it to actually be worth it. And after you land it, it's not done. You can go into the camera mode and you can actually film it and you can figure out where you should have placed the camera, and then you can put it online and share that clip with your friends. And that's what you do with skateboarding. You go out and you film something and you share it with your friends. And so it really scratches the same itch as actual skateboarding does in a way that no game had yet at that point.
Rat has his own reviews of the Skate series that are a great watch. But let's not delay any further and cover the whole series, top to bottom, starting with the legend's humble roots in San Vanalona. Opening with a shot of our player character getting into a near-fatal crash, we see a montage of our trip to the hospital, and this introduction shows us a permeating theme in the Skate series, which is its use of real-world figures and brands. All the best skaters of the time are here, and their cameos are terribly cheesy, but in the best way possible.
Seriously, Patrick, what are you doing? Shopping online.
This theme of real-world brands invading the game continues as you finally create your character, and it's here that you see different real-world brands to choose from. I think that having real brands in a game can seem out of place, but in this case it feels more realistic because I can have my character wear the same Nikes that I do. Some of these are more intrusive though, like the Adidas sponsor messages that have a pop-up encouraging you to buy their shoes. Furthermore, this is a theme within this very video, thanks to today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is an interactive visual learning tool that offers courses ranging from the specifics of STEM, math, computer science, and regular science, to broader applicable topics like logic and probability. The courses here are designed to be as intuitive and hands-on as possible, allowing you to see and feel how these topics like mathematics apply to our everyday life within finances, statistics, and more. I wish I had this when I was in high school, but thankfully I can make use of courses around logic to help me gain more knowledge and develop arguments for my beliefs, which for someone who literally does that for a job is invaluable. When I was in high school, I struggled greatly with math and science and had to pay hefty fees for tutors, but with Brilliant, not only is it more cost-effective, but it moves at your pace, meaning you can take advantage of those 3 a.m. bursts of ambition. There are thousands of lessons that feature hands-on, interactive learning, and there's new lessons added every month. The world needs more intelligence and brilliance. So to balance out the 4-hour Fortnite sessions that are rotting your brain, why not explore and expand your knowledge of probability within casinos? This was one of the first of many lessons I've been taking day in and day out, and it showed me that despite what you may think, you are not as close to hitting it big as it may seem. So if you too want to keep learning, pass that upcoming test, or just flex on your friends, you can get a special offer of 20% off for the first 200 people to click the link in the description or the pinned comment. And thank you to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Thankfully, I can still appreciate the options for customization. This unfortunately doesn't apply to the women out here as you don't yet have the option to play as a female, which the developers attributed to technical issues regarding the physics engine. Despite this, there is a female skater that you can choose to play as in Free Skate, and this immediately shows you the very animation issues that they ran into. I'm sure some workarounds were taken advantage of to include Sammy, as they only have to account for her one outfit, but when cruising at high speeds you can see that her chest is tied directly to the t-shirt's physics, meaning even the slightest of movement see her chest flapping in the wind. Admittedly, it's quite funny, but I imagine it could be mistaken for crude intentional jiggle physics if implemented further. As far as the board goes, animations feel like they have weight. I think there's some janky animations here, but nothing that'll do more than offer a chuckle. Pushing looks the way it should, tricks look the way they should, and have a satisfying slam at their end. I don't want to go too in depth with the animations, but when everything here sees a board popping up and slamming down, nailing that animation is vital, and I'd argue they killed it. Grind sounds so satisfying, and the soundtrack itself has a great range from metal to hip-hop. The music is slightly dynamic too, as the higher your multiplier, the louder the music gets, allowing you to feel the greater rise in emotion as you continue killing line after line. The game's colors function similarly. Notice how when you're stationary, the game is washed out. Start moving and it gets brighter and more colorful, with a 3x multiplier making the game bloom like Wind Waker. It's a minor detail, but it makes the game come to life in the same way that skating makes someone like you come to life. This is something a few other games have done, but it never fails to communicate a visual representation of happiness. When skating, you're in your happy place, and this is a perfect manifestation of that. The entire game is viewed through a low-angle fisheye lens with a grunge look to it. Everything seems so sloppy, but it's an aesthetic that rather ironically was nailed through precise decision-making. Even the characters in the menus have a proper cutout style that leans into a low-budget charm that the other two games never truly nailed again. Your skating playground this time around is San Vanalona, a city that, aligning with the uber realism, doesn't always feel like it was built for skating, and that's what makes it so good. The map is designed like an hourglass of income, with the top of the map consisting of suburban homes and rich living mansions. It's here that you'll skate the most lavish of endgame spots. The mega park is where you'll find consistent jumps and drops, all with an ambulance at the end to bring you back up. You'll find plenty of pools and residential banks to skate down here, along with the GED high school. Thankfully, the school has a skate park installed, which is actually one of the few dedicated skate parks in the game. If you ride the streets long enough, you'll enter the res, which features the gnarliest hills and the sharpest drops. It isn't all downhill from here though, as there are plenty of places for training, like the art gallery, which offers some abstract spots right outside of regs, a skate shop with a deceptively addictive park in the back. Further down is Old Town, where you'll find the most industrial spots of the town, with long-forgotten spillways being a source for speed and slides. I found this area to be the most ripe for spot variety, but your mileage may vary. The area at the bottom of the map is the Financial District, full of high rises and even higher staircases. It's here that you'll make your final push to superstardom, crossing parking lot gaps and banks, but it's also here that you'll find a greater density of traffic, people, and security, making the marked off areas even tougher to shred. As far as parks go, there isn't much aside from the most challenging course in the game, the penultimate goal to becoming one of the best, the culmination of all your efforts. but let's head back there later. For now, I want to call your attention to what I said earlier. The map feels like a proper city that you just so happen to be skating in, not a city designed for skating. The architecture reflects this, as does the population. People engage their right of way and cars will have no problem ruining a line, and security will take you down faster than trying to do a hippie jump in this game. You aren't meant to be skating here, not to say that you aren't allowed, but that you have to make do with your surroundings. You can't turn traffic or security off in career mode, and being able to play around those factors despite how frustrating it can be at times is part of the challenge. Nothing pains me more than failing a race right at the end because a pedestrian didn't look both ways before crossing the damn street. But this is what makes skates so appealing. A majority of the fun here will not be from the challenges, though I'm sure for casual enjoyers that's where their time will be spent, but for those who get sucked into the freedom of expression on offer here. You'll find that your satisfaction comes from finding a spot and just hitting it a million times over, trying different tricks, grinds, slides, grabs, and flips. Wherever you are on the map, so long as it isn't restricted, you can place a marker and whenever you want, return to that marker. Meaning you can find an object you want to trick off of, attempt it, and then immediately try again. I can't imagine the game would be nearly as fun if you had to run all the way around to retry a trick. Don't believe me? One pro mission sees you entering the second level of a plaza, which is restricted and grinding down a massive staircase. The grind is rather difficult because the mission requires 50 feet of it from you. Not being able to place a marker before the staircase means that if you mess it up, you have a solid 30 seconds to a minute before you can try and potentially fail again. It's one of the few times that the game does this, but it really makes you appreciate the freedom that you have here in terms of what you skate and how much you can skate it. Hell, almost all filming challenges are not restricted to any locations and are designed to be performed anywhere. The requirements might be better suited for some areas, sure. Doing a total of 1080 degrees of rotation and accumulating 12 seconds of airtime in just 30 seconds will be far easier done in a bowl or an empty pool rather than on the sidewalk, but either is possible. And that makes every single playthrough unique in some way. What I enjoy doing is picking a random challenge to complete and by the end of it, starting a filming session. And my own challenge is to keep myself within that area, forcing myself to get creative. Of course, this is a double-edged sword though, as those who are intrinsically motivated will have a great deal of fun just experimenting and challenging themselves for the sake of it. But for those of you who are extrinsically motivated, will just spam tricks to fill out a challenge, meaning the quality of the gameplay is what you make of it. But I want to focus on motivation because for some, they only want to complete challenges for the reward. And what does Skate have to offer? Not much. Now, I don't intend for this to be a criticism. In fact, I think it's a great choice. The game is meant to be realistic, and adding a progression system could yield problems with high-level characters being unrealistically athletic and new skaters being nerfed, effectively blocking off options as, if we continue with this example, one could not clear a gap hypothetically without leveling their jumping stat. This is also why I'm very happy that the game does not restrict tricks or put any of your abilities or tools behind arbitrary walls. It means that a first playthrough has a natural progression that moves at the player's pace, as their ability to perform exciting lines and clear gaps is dictated by their own skill and familiarity with the systems in place. This could create a slight problem in that each new playthrough does not reset progression, and in a way each subsequent playthrough is a pseudo new game plus. But as mentioned before, the sheer variety in ways for you to complete an objective makes replayability one of this game's strengths regardless. Otherwise, you can get your cash from many challenges, and at certain points you'll receive sponsors that, assuming you're wearing their associated product, will net you even more income, which can be used to further customize your character. I would say my only issue with this is that wearing your sponsor's gear is some of the best ways to earn money, and if you are, say, sponsored by Nike for shoes, then all Nike shoes are free, meaning you're earning money, but spending it on only pants and shirts, as wearing anything other than your sponsors just puts you at a disadvantage. You'll quickly find yourself with a surplus of income and nothing to spend it on. Completing challenges will also unlock spots for you to hit. Some of the best parks in the game, like the Plan B Warehouse, Danny Way's Mega Park, and so many more are unlocked by completing pro challenges among other things. It's nothing worth grinding for if you don't like the basic gameplay loop because all that is offered is more areas to experience that loop, like the art gallery interior and the prior mentioned. I said before that there's a great freedom in the filming challenges here, and this is seen in its truest form during the different spots around the map. Finding a good spot to hit over and over again is fun, but if you're having trouble getting started, then you can hit up the many designated spots around the map. These are automatically marked when you enter its vicinity, and the idea is that you have to beat the given score for cash and promotion. The different spots are varied from large jumps to high-speed wall rides and even basic staircases and hubbas. They often aren't too challenging, but I don't think these are here to challenge your skills, but rather to widen your perception. The city feels like it was built for living, not for skating, and these designated spots show you how to find your own within this city. San Vanalona is ripe for skating, but it just doesn't look like it yet. Sure, you could get by scraping curbs and popping over cars, but when you get into the habit of spotting an otherwise mundane structure and turning it into a 15-minute side tangent as you choose from the hundreds of ways to express yourself in the most unorthodox of places, it's a whole new game. The spots show you that with a little creativity, you can skate anything and find substance in just about every nook and cranny. While there are many challenges here that are meant to make creating your own fun more accessible, there are some flat-out challenges here that are, I think, for the sake of them. For one, there are death races, which are exactly how you imagine. They see you with a time limit and an end goal with multiple gates in between point A and B that add to your time. The gates serve as a great way of keeping you on the right track, but not outright restricting where you can go, as shortcuts still reign supreme here. The routes and races were interesting enough, and I'd recommend them for anyone starting the game, as they act as tours on the map and are easy to pick up. There's no complicated controls or skating jargon you need to learn, just pushing and going fast. There are some more complex techniques like properly slowing down for a corner by leaning on your tail instead of putting your foot down, but these aren't necessary to win. What also permeates is a civilian life, as cars and people will get in your way just as much as other skaters. It's realistic, which I can appreciate, but I won't sit here and say it isn't downright annoying, as it seems that one fall is all it takes for you to completely lose a race. At its best, it's a cruise down the suburban slopes, and at worst, it's an exercise in pure agony. I think the only mission that consistently bothered me here were the games of Skate. These on paper sound great. A game of horse where you copy the trick of whoever is setting it for the round, and only those with astute knowledge of the trick lists and how to perform them can succeed. But in motion, this is a pace killer. The AI generally will fail moves at random. Even one of the first games of Skate you play will see your opponent pulling off difficult tricks, and assuming you can reliably pull off tricks without fail, then eventually you will either run out or be wasting minutes at a time just to get one letter. These minigames also put on full display the kinks with the physics system. Your skater likes to magnetize themselves to whatever surface is closest, making things like wall riding possible. The issue that happens is when you trick over these boxes here, the game gladly shifts your position to that of the newspaper stand, which will make you bail on a gap you otherwise cleared. This issue never caused too much frustration outside of this one instance, but damn if it didn't make this particular game of Skate stick out in memory as a glimpse of eternal damnation. When I replay this game, I almost always skip these, and it's because it goes against a major theme in the game. Expression is a through line, and the freedom of expression is integral. Carve your own path in death races, find random spots to shoot videos, and even some like the photo challenges offer a decent amount of freedom in that while you may be required to gap a staircase, how you do that is entirely up to you. Here, you just replicate a trick. There is no expression, no freedom, and I wouldn't even argue that it's skill-based, as endurance plays a greater role. I think these are some of the worst parts of this game, and it sucks that there's a game of Skate with every single pro, but I can at least skip them and still get by. If you do want to complete them but don't want to try, the AI is unfortunately unable to perform 540s, so it is easily cheesed. The competitions around the map are pretty bare bones, but they're just different contexts to flex your abilities. It's typically a best trick or a jam session consisting of a few rounds, but your biggest challenge here will not be the points needed to win, but the other skaters. As much like death races, they can bump into you, and nothing is worse than having a perfect line ruined by that bastard Shingo. When the other skaters and pros aren't being a major pain in the ass, you'll be proving yourself to them in the many pro challenges. Some of these are following missions, which admittedly are as boring as they come, but others see you hitting spots, performing specific tricks, and numerous other tasks that offer great variety. The voice acting for some of these is rough at times, but it's because the pros themselves voice their own lines. So while it isn't the most polished, it feels as authentic as it can, offering more charm.
Wanna play some Skate real quick?
These challenges also unlock different areas for you, like the aforementioned Plan B warehouse, which offers hours of fun collectively. We've discussed in detail the micro goals in front of you, learning controls, completing arbitrary challenges for pros, but what is the overarching goal here? Fame, fortune, and publicity. Every challenge you complete nets you income and notoriety, which eventually allows you to do photo ops for either the Skateboard Mag or Thrasher. You get to pick your own photos, and the angles are always pretty lame, but I digress, and these escalate in scale and difficulty, with your manager and filmer Retta informing you of new opportunities, until eventually, you get a call.
This is Soundmaster Caleb from the X Games. Dude, that cover, amazing. Invite committee got together, and it's clear. You're in the X Games.
This park is the epitome of large-scale skating. You aren't battling locals anymore. You're battling other pros and the world's best, making this one of the more demanding challenges here. This park is a ton of fun to skate, and the atmosphere of the camera flashing cheering of the crowd instills this feeling that you are really on the big stage. The mega ramp is the peak of this enjoyment, as I remember spending hours on this thing when I first got here. Unlike other entries in the series, mega skating is relatively scarce here, as it's left to this park and the final challenge, Danny Way's Mega Park. The two ramps here are massive, and the track itself, while only consisting of 3 jumps and 2 half pipes, serves as some of the largest spots to bomb down. You have a jam to cap off the game, and this is more of a vanity competition than anything, but once you complete it, you get a nice message saying that you have more or less made it, and that there's not much left to do but clean up any missions and find more spots to skate. It's a proper way to end the game, and if you didn't get the hint that this game is at its best when you make your own fun, it's literally spelled out for you. But revisiting your favorite spots and hitting technically proficient lines isn't done only out of self-satisfaction, but to flex on your friends too. Skate knew its audience well enough to include a replay function with an editor. The editor is admittedly not friendly to the inexperienced, but with enough time you can do some cool stuff with keyframes, different camera angles, and cuts. Catch a glitch that sent your character into the stratosphere? Clip it. Land a nasty flip? Clip it. Even more casual lines that feature basic tricks are clip-worthy, and this replay editor even has sharing capabilities. So even when the game was over, you could compete over spots with your friends and send clips back and forth showing your stuff. It isn't a major thing, but it goes a hell of a long way for expressing yourself. There's also Free Skate, where you can play as any of the characters you met along the way and turn the traffic off, pedestrians off, and even security, leading to a more relaxed session. One of the characters you can unlock is Dem Bones, a skeleton, and you unlock him by breaking every bone in your body at least 3 times. When you take a nasty bail, the game will present the Hall of Meat report that shows you what you bruised, sprained, and broke, which was a nice feature, but wouldn't be fully realized until later on. If competition is what you seek, then you can play some battles against other players, which was fun, but I never tried it much. The first Skate is widely seen as the series in its most primitive form. And this is true of the first entry of nearly every series, but this first attempt also stands as a testament to the fact that the game doesn't need a gripping story, dramatic themes, or even massive set pieces to be endlessly enjoyable. Sometimes developing a deep and rewarding system and then dropping the player into an area to run wild is a formula for success. But this formula could very easily have been a fluke, and it's this game's sequel, Skate 2, that would be the deciding factor between whether BlackBox's idea was a flash in the pan, or something so much more. Skate 2 is widely regarded as the best in the series, and while I don't necessarily agree, hot take I know, I can understand why people feel this way. Skate 2 as a product is competent, addictive, and vast, but I believe it's when we look at Skate 2 as a sequel that the game truly shines. It took what was already a solid and fleshed out system and expanded it even further, gave you more freedom to not only skate your environment but mold it, and added a new layer of progression that will satisfy both old and new fans. It isn't perfect, but like its predecessor, it's a damn fine game, and playing the first Skate I would say is necessary as it allows you to really appreciate how much better this game is. Your new setting this time around is actually not that new. It's still San Vanalona, the mishmash of Vancouver, San Francisco, Barcelona, and California, but it's changed. It's far more impressive now thanks to an earthquake that tore the place apart. And who rebuilt it? Nobody else but Mongo Corp. They have a new regiment to enlist, and that's a strict no skating policy. We've been powerless to stop it as we've been in prison for the last 5 years after getting caught dropping in on the once drained San Van Dam. Now released, we take our trusty slab of wood and embark on another journey to fame and fortune, but with an alternative goal of reigniting San Van's passion for skating. The city strikes a great balance between feeling like a brand new location, but still keeping its familiarity, most notably in its aesthetics and charm. The suburbs have been replaced by Cougar Mountain and Waterfront, but both Old Town and the Res make a return, as does downtown, but all of them receive some notable overhauls. I found that this city had more secret spots for you to hit, some being hidden in alcoves and other being near death-defying drops that bend your suspension of disbelief. But the first major change is with the tricks. All of the old favorites are here, but there are some reasonable additions that play into the idea of leaving the board. Foot plants, hand plants, and hippie jumps buff the roster, allowing for even more forms of expression. I'll admit that I like to stick to the basics, preferring street over vert, so these changes didn't do much for me, and grab grinds do look a bit goofy in my opinion. But of course, as the onboard features evolved, so have your offboard abilities. For one, while hippie flips were a fun challenge to nail in the first game, having a more approachable hippie jump helps to add variety. But you can go even further off your board, which not only opens up a new avenue for exploration, but also for the kind of spots the game can throw at you. The first game had to make every single spot accessible by wheels, and while in some cases this worked, as having things like a wheelchair-accessible elevator platform and a parkade makes sense, other areas like the abstract design of downtown's plaza make it clear that it was made for accessibility. As much as Skate 1 is a very innovative game, retrospectively not having the ability to get off your board feels absurd. This was chalked up to development issues and technical constraints, but having it here is a solid step up and in the right direction. Unfortunately, I feel that the movement here is passable at best. You move like you're in a Resident Evil game, as your tank controls and inaccurate movement ironically offer less maneuverability than your board. It doesn't make things awful, and like I said, it's passable, much like the movable objects. There are now rails, trash bins, ramps, and other things that are scattered around the map which can be grabbed and moved. I like this addition plenty. The first Skate game placed an emphasis on finding spots and making them so much more by looking at it with a different lens. In Skate 2, that lens is under attack as the many undrained pools and caps that occupy half the city prevent you from hitting the best spots. So on top of finding the hidden gems, we now have the ability to mold those spots to our liking. It's a little restricted by the location of these rails and ramps, but most major locations will have them nearby, allowing the restrictions to shift from your highest ollie to the limits of your environment. The only time I take issue with this system is when it is applied to challenges. There are a few challenges here where the goal is to move a piece of the world into place for you to skate on, but that isn't always clear. Typically, you have to fail multiple times before eventually questioning why you barely can't make the gap to realize that you have to move a ramp into place. A rather infamous challenge sees you using a movable quarter pipe to hand plant a backboard. Finding the right spot to place a quarter pipe is always an exercise in whack perspective, but you can at least tie the object's position to your session marker, preventing tedium. You may have noticed that outside of a few exceptions, your tricks are much the same. Even the new tools like grabbing while grinding are simply taking two already familiar actions and combining them. That isn't a problem, but the progression is. A major form of progression in the first game was with the player learning to grasp the controls. Sure, I don't imagine they'd be nailing every trick with perfect consistency after playing one game, but their time to skill return should be diminishing, and very quickly. I've already expressed my disinterest with the monetary and aesthetic progression, and I'd like to show you some creative ways you progress this time around. Of course, clothing and sponsors are still here, but new additions are more milestone events and contests. Rather than the X Games, we have the Sandvana Slamma, which serves the same function, offering not just one mega ramp, but 4, meaning this has some great replayability and variety for lines. Sadly, there isn't a street component, but that's okay because competitions like Goofy vs. Regular make an appearance to scratch that itch. These courses and competitions are unlocked by simply completing enough challenges, much like the Fun Track and the Monster Clubhouse, two areas which are interesting because they are unlocked by purchasing them. These things are not cheap, and that's what I appreciate the most about them. They are something you work towards, and I get that they work the same as any other unlockable, as the amount of cash you have is directly tied to the challenges you've completed, but the reward remedies any criticism, as the street elements of the Monster Clubhouse is one of my favorite areas to revisit, and the Fun Track is arguably everyone's favorite mega course in the game, if not the series. The Fun Track is an offshoot of Danny Way's Mega Park. Positioned to the left of it, it looks much the same and offers a few different routes, one of which sees you airing over a dividing hill and landing in the bowl that previously ended the runs on Danny's side. Most didn't get a ton out of this in single player, but it's in multiplayer where the Fun Track becomes a lot more, well, fun. Competitions and other challenges this time around feel just as good as ever, and they up the stakes from the first game in notable ways. Fortunately, I found myself running into other skaters less, or when I did, they didn't send me 10 feet over my board. I also like that there was more variety here. It wasn't just jams and best tricks, but a mix of the two, meaning if you excel in a jam more than best tricks, you're probably safe. Death races now see you ending a run in a pile of trash or boxes, which are rather cartoonish ways to cap off a death-defying stunt, which left Fabio from the first game in a coffin, with the first death race you participate in being in his honor. Death races now allow you to place bets, adding tension in exchange for a chance at faster progression. I found the challenges to have more variety this time around, and there's this sense of rebellion that your actions have that just wasn't captured the same in the first skate. It's a feeling you can't get anywhere else. Every skate park you purchase for the city, every pool you drain, spot you hit, cap you take off a ledge, and security guard that just gets his shit rocked by Big Black contributes to Sandvan's fight to revive skating, and the expression that you once had in the first game. But even if you're a brand new player, the game has plenty of tutorials for you to learn at the new school. Learn the basics of pops off giant alphabet letters. But I'm positive you already know this stuff. You can pop an ollie, hit a 5-0, but here's the real question. Can you spell girl? If you're a fan of skates, or hell, even played the game, you know the horse shit I'm about to revisit. And I even have a confession to make. Please, forgive me, Father, for I have never genuinely beat this mission. Sure, I've ticked it off, but that was by cheesing it, not by genuinely beating it. These games of skate are some of the hardest challenges in the game, nigh the series, and it's easy to see why. You'll spend the majority of your playthrough learning to reliably perform the different tricks here, and a test of that is against not one, but 2 skaters on an obstacle that really likes to show you the unreliable physics of the series up to this point. It's awful. Now, I wrote this part of the script before my 3rd playthrough of Skate 2, and believe it or not, when I got back to this pro challenge, I beat it legitimately, and it was a perfect game. But this also highlights an issue with the length of the challenge, as it still took so many minutes for these guys to fail. The games of Skate are the same as before. It's a random chance of a skater bailing on a trick, and in this case, not only are the skaters pros, meaning they are less likely to bail, but there are 2 of them, so it'll take twice as long. I am not lying when I say this challenge can be a 45-minute ordeal, and why it wasn't left as some sort of post-game mission is beyond me. In fairness, you can see nearly every inch of Skate 2 without touching this challenge, but that doesn't excuse how poorly designed it is. The best part is, after I did win, when the victory screen pops, it shows X as retrying and circle as continuing. Why? X has always been the button to accept or continue, but now it forces me to redo this little slice of hell, and I'm convinced this is the game just wanting to fuck with people. I'm sorry. I'm gonna calm down. With the more oppressive San Van, there are more ways for you to become a public enemy and fight the power. Sammy has taken up a new side gig draining abandoned pools for you to skate. Once you find 3 pools, allowing the player to feel the disappointment of finding an otherwise great spot that is ruined by the pesky water, you can drain them. Draining these pools will offer spots for the pros to take refuge in, and in the same vein we have Mike, whose crowbar can be used to take off the ledge caps. This functions less as a means of fighting back and more of a tedious prerequisite to skating a spot. I didn't feel the same way towards Sammy, as in her case there were fewer pools to drain and there was motivation, as the final pool you can drain is in the San Van Dam. This spot is what got you injured and arrested, so getting a redemption shot is a ton of fun, on top of the mere spectacle of it. With Mike, it was just a knee-jerk reaction to lining up for a grind just to realize that you forgot to pay the $100 fee. And these fees are negligible too, and I'm not sure why they even charge at all. A rather fun service is Big Black, who you can hire when skating the more difficult restricted zones. Rather than just one security guard, there are now full-on patrols that'll chase you halfway across the city, but calling in Big Black for security will allow him to bulldoze these guys. You'll meet him thanks to Rob Deerdick, who has his own set of bonus challenges in the game which see you incorporating your emotes into the action. Nothing revolutionary, but a more engaging challenge is those provided by Danny Way, who shows you some massive drops that he hasn't been able to conquer, leaving the challenge up to you. I like that these were pretty hard to nail, and as a bonus challenge these were great as they incorporated gaps that I didn't even think possible. I mean, gapping from the trail above to a mini bowl and then transitioning into a larger bowl is wild, and finding more spots like this really opens your world and your skull if you eat it. Something that was always appealing in the first game was just how hard you could bail. Especially gnarly falls made the game replay the fall and show you what bones you broke, bruised, and sprained. And many found it fun to find different ways to shatter their bones, and this is expanded upon here as there are some challenges for you to complete, such as breaking certain bones, and while it's simple stuff, it's a fun side activity. It rewards some spawn points that make achieving other challenges easier, and I'm serious when I say that I spent hours just slamming myself into whatever I could at top speed. The spots here are nearly unchanged, but you can create your own spot by finding a part of the map and setting a score for others to compete in. It isn't anything revolutionary, but it acts as the groundwork for what the next entry would accomplish with flying colors. I like the idea of creating a spot as it reasonably builds on the ideas instilled in you from the first game. If the spots themselves don't change the way you perceive the world and what is and isn't a viable spot, then you can let others do the hard work for you. The soundtrack here is good as expected, but suffers from something that was a minor gripe in the first game. The songs here are all good. Not better than the first game, but hey, music is subjective. Something I praised before is that the music plays louder as you perform better tricks, but the music in general only plays at designated points of interest on the map. This means that if you just cruise around, you'll only hear a few snippets and will sometimes be left with silence. In short bursts, this is okay and it allows you to appreciate the sound design of the world, but eventually, it's a drowning silence. The challenges, while similar to the first game, have a fundamental difference. In the first game, you were pushed towards certain milestones. When a milestone photo op was available, it was the only challenge you could do. More specific tasks like death races were locked behind said milestones, and it forced you to diversify and seem like the master skater the game built you up to be. Here, you can focus on each challenge to its conclusion regardless of progression towards your photos or any other challenges. I ended up tackling every death race first, and left all photo ops for last. I think this lacks a narrative progression present from the first game, but this streamlining makes the game more enjoyable for those that want to avoid the challenges they don't like. You'll have to complete just about every challenge though before unlocking some of the extra goodies, like the Regs mini ramp that was locked up at Slappy's. The game built this up as a major reward, hinting at it in loading screens, but I'm not gonna lie, this was really disappointing. Something Skate 2 decided to add, which Skate 3 would follow, is DLC. Surprisingly, the DLC here is sparse, but enjoyable. The Maloof pack is fun, but it's a bit pointless given its appearance in Skate 3. In this DLC, it just feels bare bones in comparison, but I'm sure it was good for the time. The second DLC is the Fantasy Warehouse, which features a set of Fantasy Factory, a popular MTV show hosted by none other than Deerdick. The show itself is awesome, and the park here is a lot of fun to skate around in. There is also unfortunately the Time is Money pack, which just gives you all of the unlockables. A pretty shitty microtransaction given that it more or less beats the game for you, but by EA standards, I'd say we kind of got off easy. Overall, Skate 2 doesn't have a whole lot to talk about. It's just flat out good, and a great sequel. It added to the realism of the first game along with the ideas presented there. It had a city that felt new while offering classic locations with plenty of secret spots off the beaten path. I mean, dropping in from the San Van Alona sign is probably one of the most most legendary drops in the series. It took the freedom of expression from the first game and restricted it, forcing you to engage in the rebellious side of your punk hobby. It seems as though the game upped the stakes in the extremes too by showcasing more mega ramps. But this is a utopian pursuit that will eventually lead to the game's sequel losing what made it an instant classic. Rather than return to the grunge of the first two Skate games, Skate 3 decided to head in an entirely new direction. On the surface, this game barely looks like it's part of the same series as the first two. The first Skate was about expression, the second about rebellion, and 3 is the Utopia. There is no game in this series that I have played anywhere close to as much as I've played Skate 3. A skating heaven that offers endless replayability, customization, and more collaboration than even games to this day. Rather than having security guards preventing you from skating, the security guards themselves are skating, skatable objects are falling from the sky, and the massive parks are back in full force. Beginning with a very on-the-nose acknowledgement of the series jumping the shark, our main character suffers a critical injury. With yet another meeting with death, our trusty cameraman Retta vents his frustrations with working for others and decides that instead, we should be our own boss and start a skateboarding brand. You've already made a name for yourself, even the default player name is The Legend, and this continuity is appreciated. Now, rather than performing for other brands and sponsors, you perform for yourself, with each milestone being earned through board sales. But no person is an island, and neither is The Legend. So with each milestone, you'll be recruiting new members to join your team and compete with. But you won't be defending your throne atop San Vanalona. Rather, you'll be conquering new territory in the city of Port Carverton. On top of the city being new, you'll notice that the art style has seen a change too. The art style is far cleaner and simplistic. Here's a hot take, I like the art style more. It's sleek, simple, and cosmetically it offers more variety. The clothing in the first two games was baggier, but I've always identified with the cheap castles offering no ballroom. Having options for nut huggers and different hoodies, jackets, and plaids appealed to me more than all the flared jeans from the earlier games. Streets are cleaner, spots aren't as scratched, and finally, there isn't a camera lens PNG over the screen. No more filter that obscures the environments, and a seamless hall of meat. Port Carverton is a great city, but it doesn't feel like a city. Allow me to explain. Firstly, the city is split into 3 districts, but you cannot seamlessly traverse them like you could in the first 2 games. Instead, you just warp around to different districts. These districts do more to offer aesthetic changes than it does to offer different things to different players. Sure, downtown will still provide the best street spots, but conveniently, there's something for everyone, even when there shouldn't be. Let's look at the university. The university seems to have a focus on skating, which is understandable. So we have the campus and some residential areas below with a park at the bottom. Further up the mountain, we have some highways for bombing down, with the observatory being the peak of the mountain and the entrance to one of the spillways, which features drops, gaps, and a bridge perfect for photo mode. You can either ride the spillway to the homes below or veer off into the super ultra mega park, and no, I did not just make that name up. Somehow, in the side of a mountain is a university-sponsored mega park, which while fun, and is a spot many will revisit time and time again, is very out of place. Skate is meant to be a simulator of sorts, paralleling real life, but is this really something we'd ever see in our real lives? I'd argue, not likely. Again, the park is fun with tons of interconnected paths and unorthodox ways to reach for the grand finale ramp at the end, but it doesn't fit. This may seem like a nitpick, and on the surface, I think it is, but the Mega Park is indicative of a design philosophy that immediately separates this game from its predecessors. San Vanalona in both iterations were created as a city first and as a virtual skate park second. Yes, some spots were rather convenient and there were dedicated skate parks and stadiums, but it all made sense within an actual city. Port Carverton feels like a skate park first, city second. You wouldn't see a mega park in the side of a mountain. You wouldn't see a random drained pool in the only commercial area of a district. You wouldn't find massive slopes next to a monument to memorialize soldiers. And why are we skating over their memorials? But that's a different nitpick. The point is, this doesn't feel like a city all the time, and I can see where players feel an immediate disconnect from Skate 1 and 2. But I actually like this change, as it puts a greater emphasis on the skating, but we'll talk about that more later. Let's avoid the many rabbit holes for now and look at the industrial district. As the name implies, this part of the city is full of the grime and grunge you'd expect with some of the largest bowls in the game, and plenty of ledges for you to slide over. The quarry and spillway overlook the district, scratching the high-speed mega itch. The spillway has plenty of gaps, a side pipe that offers even more speed and loops, and has an excellent exposed transition to the rooftops, which feature their own spots and gaps. The quarry is a perfect example of allowing the more extreme side of skateboarding to be present without sacrificing realism or practicality. It even leads to a not-so-secret spot that offers its own level of extreme. extreme. You can't top dropping in from the top of the E, but hey, I like the attempt. The best segment of this district is the stretch from the bottom of the quarry to the plaza, which features plenty of rails, ledges, and staircases for you to make a ton of different lines with. The final district is downtown, which offers the most street variety, but still has a few bowls and large gaps. The memorial here is fun to shred, but feels a bit wrong given that this is a place of mourning, but there's plenty of other locations like the Parkade and Cube Towers, which have some rather abstract spots for you to hit. This district, more than any other, is reminiscent of the big city vibes present in the first two games. It's all familiar, but that doesn't mean it's not good. As a whole, Port Harverton has some of the best spots in the series. While few come close to the likes of the Fun Track, the Super Ultra Mega Park offers insane variety and massive gaps and lines, but the University has plenty of Verton Street too, as does downtown and the Industrial District. Aside from the aesthetics of the districts, there are a few things that really separate them. I don't mind this, but I'll admit that this idea that every district needs some kind of street, vert, and mega contributes to the idea that this isn't a city but a big skate park. Hell, half the inhabitants look like tourists, cause who the hell would actually live here? But we aren't necessarily here for the different spots. There are only so many unique ways to build a hubba. What we're looking for is a means to use these spots. Unfortunately, Skate 3 suffers from the diminishing returns presented from a system that has real-world limits. It's too risky to incorporate the near-impossible tricks or those that are simply too extreme, as it could further blur the once sharp edge between Skate and Tony Hawk. What has been added here is a more intrusive form of the Super Dude from Skate 2, which if flipped will be called the Miracle Whip, one of this game's more uncanny sponsors along with Dr. Pepper. Other moves like the Dark Catch make a welcome appearance here for added grind variety, and some previous tricks now show underflip variations which add flair to otherwise tired moves, but this won't do much to raise the stakes or the challenge. I've alluded to this enough so far. Skate 3 has a sizable problem in front of it. How are we supposed to provide new progression for players that already know how to do 90% of the tricks with consistency? Street is fun and scratches the real-life-esque itch, but it's dead easy by now. So BlackBox had to figure something else out, and their solution was, in some ways, genius: difficulty. Instead of simply having a set difficulty like the previous game, Skate 3 opted to add an easy difficulty for new players and a realism mode for the more experienced folk. These difficulties will force players to familiarize themselves with the mechanics that otherwise wouldn't matter, so let's cover those. In the first two Skate games, the height of your ollie or the accuracy of your grinds were not crucial to your success. In realism mode, simply popping a tray flip isn't possible without first allowing your knees to bend all the way down. You also need to flick with greater speed, and speed sacrifices accuracy, so you might find that tricks are more difficult to nail. You also don't get speed as easily, requiring 5 pushes instead of 3 to hit max speed. You bail easier, can't take the same falls, but the most notable change is the grinds. In previous games, you had to be somewhat precise when approaching a rail, but if you were a little off, the game cut you some slack and moved you to the proper spot. On realistic, you get no help. And I found this to be the hardest change to adjust to, as I had to grapple with a level of precision I just wasn't used to. BlackBox could have easily just made the point requirement for challenges higher, asking the player to perform better tricks, but that would be artificial difficulty. I've mentioned the idea of artificial difficulty a few times in other videos, but I've come to realize I've never clearly defined what it is to me. Artificial difficulty is essentially a band-aid fix for challenge, giving enemies larger health bars but leaving everything else untouched. In a skate context, it would be raising point requirements. You do the same thing, but now you just have to do more of it. And this could lead to even greater issues as you are now restricted in what tricks you can and cannot use, sticking to hard flips instead of heel flips for point efficiency. Genuine difficulty is when you give the same requirement, same health bars, but make achieving it harder by requiring more skill. Learning to properly pop, rotate, and aim when approaching a rail is now more difficult and necessary on a harder difficulty. Now, for someone like myself, I have a new genuine challenge. I've showed the game that I know its bag of tricks, but now I need to provide a deeper understanding. On easy difficulty, it's near impossible to fail a flip in a bowl, and pumping sends you up at Mach 1, but on realistic, pumping is a requirement. And flips are as hard to nail as ever, now requiring that you time your takeoff so that you can rotate and land with little downtime. It makes Mega more difficult, as landing at a proper slope so as not to fail is even more important, making your pop off the ramp even harder too. Furthermore, building off of Skate 2, there are more challenges to kill, including races, photos, films, and just about anything that isn't tied to point requirements. On easy, every pop sends you skyward, and grinds are even more magnetic. Reaching top speed is easier and your momentum carries over in a forgiving manner. This is perfect for a new player, or the most experienced in some cases. This difficulty setting is indicative of Skate 3's push towards accessibility. The Skate series up to this point has been seen as difficult to pick up, and I can see where that sentiment comes from. The trade-off is that with most skating games, once you get the controls down, they feel amazing. The previous games had general tutorials and some basics, but thanks to Coach Frank, it's even easier to get into the Skate series. The tutorial isn't mandatory, but the skills provided in the beginner segment are important for establishing your fundamentals. How to move on the board, how to grind, how to line up that grind, when to bend and when to pop. This is everything you need to complete the game. You'll likely learn more along the way, and sure, there are some helpful mechanics the game doesn't teach you, but I think that this was done to not overwhelm the player. The intermediate tier teaches you the other mechanics that won't necessarily help you win a challenge, but will help you express yourself. The final tier just shows you some of the new tricks. I think the tutorial is damn good and is the best introduction thus far. This, combined with a larger moveset and refined physics, makes this the best option for beginners, but it likely isn't what got players buying this game. Another step towards streamlining Skate was with the overall goal. Now there are no landmark photos and fewer landmark events. You don't need to meet with everyone before challenges are unlocked, and you pick whatever you want to invest your time into with nothing in between. In the first game, you unlocked more competitions by getting more coverage, meaning you'd play the other challenges to get more of your favorites, but here, if street competitions are all you want, then there's nothing preventing you from bombing down that path. For now, let's look at the different challenges in front of you. It's all standard fare, so I'll just focus on the new or heavily changed. First is the independent photos. In the first game, and somewhat in the second, you'd be given a challenge to do anywhere in the world. Here, you just do anything, anywhere, and even pick the camera angle. It feels like a proper innovation of what was done in the first game, except it's ripe for exploitation. If you wanted to, you could place the camera, do a stationary ollie, and boom, free board sales. Now, this is up to the player, and these photos will be shown across Port Carverton, but in some cases, you just have to take a photo that won't be shown off. It's really a non-problem, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Within these photos are challenges for the other members of your team. As you progress, you'll recruit different skaters to your roster of 5 and do challenges with them, notably photos. It didn't change anything other than appearance, but it was still cool. I have a slight problem with the new team challenges though, which is that it makes your challenges a matter of RNG. For example, a team death race will see you and one of your AI-controlled partners facing 2 other skaters, and even if you come in first by a colossal margin, if your AI partner comes in last, you lose. This applies to the competitions too, as my best trick would be better than the other 2 skaters, but when my AI party member can't hit a single trick, I lose. This is incredibly frustrating, and meant I was redoing challenges over and over again, praying that my party member gets his shit together. A new category of challenge is Hall of Meat. I know these were in the second game, but this time they are official challenges, and the Hall of Meat system has been fully fleshed out now. You have more control in the air with the spread eagle, and different poses used for breaking certain bones are useful for challenges. They usually include hitting a score, breaking specific body parts, and tagging targets. To help you, you can push the triggers to push off the ground, extending your bail. It's a fun mode, but truthfully was never the most memorable, and I could see someone not enjoying it because it serves as an arcadey joke mode compared to the more realistic iteration in Skate 1 and 2. The bails this time around also feel more stiff, making falls far less humorous than previous entries. If you thought owning the spot was good, now you can own the lot. This sees you completing a series of small tasks within a large area, be that the mega park, the library, or any other major location. These were an enjoyable means of highlighting the best spots of an area that, while not doing anything innovative, is decent fodder. The final massive change made here is within the head-to-head challenges, specifically against pros. Instead of the hellish games of Skate, we have 1-up, which puts emphasis on score rather than tricks. This is far better than the latter, and I'm just so happy that this is here. Someone sets a score over the course of 30 seconds, and assuming they don't bail, the next player will have to beat the score. If they don't 1-up the other, then they get a letter. And if they do, then the next player will be tasked with beating that until someone bails or fails to 1-up the other. There's not much to say. It's just better than Skate and is a greater test of skill and expression. Of course, 1-up is just one of the challenges that can be played online, which has seen its own set of overhauls. You can now explore every location online, but with strict boundaries, not just between districts, but between locations. You can do races, games of Skate, 1-ups, and so much more. It gave the series more of a social aspect outside the clip editor, which returned and is even more accessible this time around. You can even create a custom crew, give them a name and a logo, and it offered a sense of community that I was lucky enough to be a part of in its heyday. Even today, it is entertaining to visit and download other creations and skate them with friends. And while there's little here for analysis, I think the good times speak for themselves. One of the greatest means of congregating together was creating, sharing, and visiting parks. As you reach new milestones and board sales, you'll gain access to a few different parks. There's the campus facility, the downtown plaza, the warehouse, and the stadium, each increasing in size and offering different objects. I won't go into the different locations as it's mere set dressing, but I want to get into the different objects as they are the epitome of replay value. You have your street, vert, plaza, and mega pieces. Street is generally smaller, made for realistic parks. Plaza is much the same but with a bit more style, and feels like terrain that belongs less in a park and more on the streets. The vert pieces are self-explanatory, as is the mega, which is just everything else but big. There are rails, ledges, foliage, catwalks, and a ton of other stuff that I'm sure most of you you still watching are familiar with. I assume you're all also familiar with how great of a creative output this is. Your tools include duplication, rotation, snapping, and interestingly enough, clipping. You can place an object inside another object, allowing for compound objects to be made. There's a limit to the amount of objects and props you can use, but it was a reasonable limit. There's something so relaxing about making a park from scratch or following someone's guide, because you can seamlessly transition from skating to creating, meaning you can make a staircase, skate it, and tweak it accordingly. Building parks is a game in and of itself, and I found myself going through a similar transition from the simplistic parks I began building to the more stylized and ambitious parks that I'm showing off now. With online features, downloading and uploading parks gave the game a near endless amount of fun, but it's only a matter of time before the online features get shut down. I wish I had more to say, because the system I spent hundreds of hours in feels like it warrants more than a paragraph, but it's just simply perfect. So, as I'm sure you've noticed, there are a few discrepancies within Skate 3. As a means of explaining away these discrepancies, I've become infatuated with a theory that I saw in a Skate 3 iceberg video, and that is that you are dead in Skate 3. The game starts with your death, off the shark. In the first game, a bus puts you halfway in the grave, so a fall from this height would surely kill you. Also notice that after such a fall, Retta just wakes you up and then leaves you. No sirens, no doctors, you're just fine. The game also does not go into the logistics of the board company, rather you just skate away. This explains some other odd occurrences like Fabio, who died in between Skate 1 and 2, and is just now freely moving around in the world. The game calls no attention to this, he's just there. This also explains away things like the Super Ultra Mega Park. A Mega Park on the side of a mountain could never happen in real life, but in the afterlife, there's no rules. That's why there are objects that fall from the sky, or why you can just enter a stadium and create any park. And it's why there are no restricted zones or security guards. It's why injuring yourself is now an independent sport. I mentioned that earlier games had a system where, depending on your score and if you were moving, the colors of the world would become brighter and more vibrant to reflect the bliss experienced when skating. That feature isn't present here. The colors are always bright, because you're in a constant state of divine bliss. But let's be real here. While this theory is fun, I think it's just my way of coping with the continuity errors, the omitted features, and the less than realistic tone this game has taken compared to its predecessors. Skate 3, as I'm sure most know, was made in less than a year and was rushed. I think that's why the final product is one that feels so different. They had a hodgepodge of ideas like the university campus and the spillway, but no feasible means of connecting them within a larger city, so they just didn't. Instead, segmenting the city into districts. Objects falling out of the sky and park building is just a flat-out good feature, and I assume having Fabio as a playable character is just for quality of life. But things like the lack of changing colors were likely due to the rush nature of the game. There are no restricted areas, likely because the team wanted to focus their efforts elsewhere. Even the title screen has ditched the ambitious aesthetics of the previous entries for just a JPEG with a start button. And this rushing likely explains how this is the buggiest entry in the series. It's sad, but at least I can keep some sort of headcanon in place as a shield to my nostalgia bias. I think all of this, the game being rushed, the change in art style, and the step towards accessibility is all connected. By the time the Skate series was beginning to take off, their biggest competitor, Tony Hawk, was starting to bail. Its transition into peripheral-based games was not a fruitful one, and there's a good chance that EA saw the writing on the wall and knew that there would be Tony Hawk fans looking for a skating game that would satisfy. And since the flick-it controls seemed unapproachable to outsiders, EA wanted change. I think that's why the art style became brighter, the tutorials more in-depth, and why there's a lack of skater culture in here, at least in comparison to previous games. I haven't talked about the skate culture present in these games yet, but the culture is cool, but it parallels real life a little too much. Elitists love to give casual shit and hate on trickliners in the game for no reason. In real life, you'll be harassed for mall grabbing, and in the game, if you God forbid push Mongo once, you'll be lambasted by people who care way too much about how other people express themselves. At the beginning of this video, I made sure to include a few Mongo pushes, and chances are there are already comments about it. But either way, let's go back to the different ways Skate 3 tries to make itself more accessible. And the most interesting part is, it worked. Growing up, Skate 3 was the talk of the town, and even now it still is. Sure, there are many hardcore skate fans that believe the second game is the best, and I can see why, but the general public seems to think that the best skate game is this one. It saw a resurgence years after its release thanks to Let's Players and still has a ton of content being made for it today. Skate 3's extended lifecycle was also likely due to all of its DLC. The added content here is not only overpriced, but lazily made too. And while Skate 3 is by no means a hard or long game to complete, wink, you can buy the Time is Money pack to unlock everything, essentially having the game completed for you. The Skate Create pack is the only pack that offers a decent bang for your buck, as there are hundreds of ways to combine the new park elements and camera features with your existing set, but even this will vary vastly from player to player. Some of the parks on sale here are in some ways downright boring, but others are worth diving into. The BlackBox park, despite being the smallest, might be my favorite. It's perfect for street skating and has plenty of sizable gaps for anyone wanting extremity, but not much else. A few challenges are here, and it's just overall a condensed but enjoyable park, especially for only $3. The Maloof 2010 park just feels empty. DLC. The street segment here is decent enough, and same with the vert, and even if it is accurate to the actual park, I'd still say for $5 it's not entirely worth it. For the same price, you can get Danny Way's Hawaiian Dream, which is large and features the mega ramps that are now associated with Way in the skate games. I love the aesthetics, and the challenges were a good amount of fun too. It even has a bit of street in there too. Like most DLCs here, it adds some new assets for park building, and it's a good addition to the collection of mega parks. The art gallery was released alongside Party Play and features a recreation of the spot from the first game, but somehow doesn't nail the same charm. Maybe it's the fact that it looks visibly empty, or that there are holes that lead you to out-of-bounds areas, but it just feels cheap and unfinished. Contrasting this is a skate park adjacent to the gallery, which I believe is entirely original, and it's far more fun to skate around in. For the $5 price tag, I don't think it's that bad, but when some of the environment feels unfinished and when Party Play as a staple of the series should have been in the game upon release, I think it's safe to skip this one. The Sanatorium is the final park featured in the After Dark pack, which allows you to, well, skate after dark. It's a fun and finished revisit to an older map from San Vanalona, plain and simple. The DLC here is fine enough, and disconnected from its price, I can confidently say I enjoy it, but saying it's worth the money feels like a stretch, especially when I still find myself returning to Port Carterton for self-expression. Overall, despite its flaws, Skate 3 is one of, if not my favorite game of all time. It was a cornerstone of my childhood and was where a lot of my online social interactions took place. I know it's mostly nostalgia, but Skate 3 just reminds me of simpler times, where I didn't have so much responsibility and stress. Its park creations and online functions offer so much variety, and its city, while in some ways weaker than its predecessors, feels like a utopian experience that our protagonists earned through their hours of fighting the oppressive powers that be in Skate 2. While I know Skate 3 has its share of haters, I think this game does a great job of rounding out the series. Did it abandon its roots in order to achieve greater accessibility? Yes, I believe it did, but perhaps abandon isn't accurate. I see it more as a trade, and it's a trade that works in the game's favor. I still love the grittiness of the first two games, but the bright utopia of Skate 3 is equally loved. The fundamentals are the same, but Skate took them to greater heights thanks to a fully fleshed out online mode, and while it may have jumped the shark in the process, the cons are far from outweighing the pros. So which skate game is the best then? Well, unfortunately, I'm going to take the cop-out answer and say it's truly up to the individual. Personally, I think it's Skate 3. It has the best looking aesthetic, the park builder offers endless replayability, the soundtrack was the best, and the additions of easy and hardcore mode offer different ways to play. But I also wouldn't disagree with someone saying Skate 2 is the best. Skate 2 is some of the most memorable spots in the series, like the top of the E and the dam, that are both more extreme than the likes of the Super Ultra Mega Park, yet don't feel out of place world-wise and aesthetically. I also think that the ragdoll physics are the best here, offering some of the funniest bails in the series. Physics feel fine-tuned and heavy in this iteration, which makes realistic skating better than the first, but not better than the third in my eyes. I can even understand someone thinking the original is the best, as it has a charm unlike any other game, and while it's a shock to the system to not be able to get off your board, the physics in skating is as clean as ever. It also has the best intro in the series, with the other two being forgettable long-term. But perhaps your favorite will soon change. It's here that this video was supposed to end, with the Skate legacy being left in 2010, sacred and untouched. But it seems EA wasn't happy to let sleeping dogs lie. Nearly a decade later, in June of 2020, EA confirmed that a new skate game, Skate 4, was in the works. I could not properly express the excitement I had, and the idea of reliving my childhood with a new experience sounded so appealing. The developers seemed so passionate about the product, and more importantly, transparent. This game has been in development for longer than the other games by now, and they've been truthful in saying that the game just isn't ready yet. I'd much rather wait for a polished product than get a half-baked product a year or two early. What got me even more excited was that the pre-alpha that was leaked in July of this year looks amazing. I can't show footage of it obviously, as EA would smite my channel down, and I haven't taken the risk of downloading it, but the footage I've seen looks so promising. Animations are smooth and have weight, and gameplay looks true to the Skate legacy, and even has some added off-board movements that can be combined with your skating abilities. Sure, a lot of it is untextured and not every move is here, but again, it's promising. But right as I was at my most hyped, the more pessimistic side of my brain came knocking on my euphoric door. EA today is not the same as they were in 2010. Their last handful of releases have been messes riddled with as many microtransactions as bugs and broken promises. What's stopping Skate 4 from being another Madden that they milk every year? Not much. But as I was drowning in the what-ifs, my fears were validated. The developers of Skate 4, full circle, announced that the game would not be Skate 4, but simply Skate. A reboot. This time with a whole new price tag of free, with plans of consistent free updates. That's right, a free-to-play reboot of the series. And if you're anything like me, then you already see the writing on the walls. I'm expecting battle passes, microtransactions, a limited and gimped-free experience. Imagine this, for only a limited time, you can complete the season's battle pass to unlock skins of pros. Park building assets like ramps and staircases will be rotating through daily shops. Sure, some of this sounds nice. Keeping the game free and accessible is great, and I could easily see myself jumping on every day to do some daily challenges around the map. But restricting anything non-cosmetic to the player is the antithesis of the games to this point. I'm so worried that EA will take this too far and put all these incentives to buy in-game currency that will ruin the game and what the series has stood for. Imagine if they lock tricks behind a paywall or a battle pass or some experience system. Now the progression is no longer put on the player, allowing them to learn and get better over time, but instead it is put in the hands of artificial progression. Just get to level 5 to unlock the kickflip. And if you buy 5 levels from the daily store, then you can unlock the Renegade too. I'm sorry, look, I'm not mad. I'm just scared. Let me level with you a little bit. The Skate series has meant so much to me. As a kid, I grew up with helicopter parents. I wasn't allowed to cross a street without someone escorting me, and the prospect of doing something like skateboarding was entirely off the table. Hence why I remained a spectator. Video games have always been an escape for me, and Skate was that other world I went to when things got tough in the real world. I talked to people on the game more than I did in real life at times, and being able to customize my character, my parks, and have a game built around expression was the perfect remedy for a life where I was surrounded by strict rules. Its gameplay was addictive, its social elements the beginning of friendships and good times, and the soundtracks introduced me to some artists I still listen to this day. Every few years, conveniently when life seems to get especially hard, I find myself returning to the series, doing a marathon over the course of a few days. I have nothing but good memories of the series, and every repeat playthrough is like a cleanse to my soul. Even the soundtrack alone fills me with a nostalgic bliss that instantly puts a smile on my face and reminds me of the good old days. That is what the legacy of Skate is to me. Expression, rebellion, freedom, and community. So I'm scared. Scared that this franchise has meant so much to me is at risk. This franchise that means so much to so many people is hanging in the balance. The legacy of Skate is up for renewal, and Full Circle, as they get puppeteered by the suits higher up, can hopefully decide its fate. And simply put, I sincerely hope they don't fuck it up. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you for supporting me on Patreon and YouTube members, so much so that I actually am going to try not reading them out this time. They're just going to be on screen right now because there's so many names that it's actually really hard to read them out. It takes so long. So if it's all the same to you guys, I'm just going to have them on screen. My gratitude is the exact same though. Seriously, thank you. And thank you to RadRat for jumping in on this video with me. It was really good to have somebody who was a skater talk about the skate games from that viewpoint, because as mentioned, I don't do it as much, and so I can't really come at the games from that angle. This was really fun to make. This was a bit of a passion project. I think you could probably tell that because this isn't as, I guess, sophisticated as other videos, but I've been working on this script in the background between other videos for the last like 2-3 months, and it's been really, really cool because, as mentioned, the skate games mean everything to me. And I'm gonna try and stay positive about Skate 4, but like, dude, I'm kind of over it already. Like, I kind of think it's whatever. I have the first 3 games, and EA can't take that away from me. Well, they could take it off backwards compatibility, but you get what I mean. I could still emulate it. Yeah, I really had fun making this, and thank you so much for supporting me. Shouts to Sean, our editor, who, as of this video going up, is editing the next video, and yeah, that's basically it. I have a new episode of the podcast with Nick out right now. Nam's Compendium. I don't know why I called him Nick. And that'll be linked in the description and in the pinned comment. And thank you for your support, because this was a video I never thought I'd be able to make because I didn't think anyone would watch it. And while whether anyone watches it as of recording is still to be determined, the idea that I have other videos that are doing okay, so I can afford to just put out one that maybe doesn't reach as wide of an audience. That's really awesome, and thank you guys for helping me out with that, and thank you for watching. If you did watch the whole thing, holy shit, thanks. And yeah, working on the next video. Hopefully I'll be back sooner than later. I love you guys. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you next time.